The law of attraction responds to what your energy is, what you're putting out there, your values, your personality. All these things come together to create what I call your energy blueprint, what you radiate outwards. Everything that you are has created the life around you right now, contributed to where you find yourself now. If you want to change everything from the ground up, you have to completely dismantle everything that you already are right now. And that's no easy task. Like, you don't do that overnight, right? Sometimes the universe might be like, oh, just kidding, this is happening overnight. They pull out the last little bottom block in the Jenga tower and it all falls down, right? And why affirmations are important, why visualization is important, because your brain is physically creating these thoughts and it's physically creating an imprint in your energy, in your body, and it's going to radiate outwards and your mind is going to reinforce it, and then your energy is going to reflect that, and it's like a domino effect.
Welcome, everyone. Today, we're going to dive into the topic of manifestation. I couldn't think of a better person to discuss this topic with me as Sarah Rae. She is a manifesting coach, a crystal Reiki master. Sarah, I'm really excited to have you on Soul Communication. I was on your podcast just a couple of weeks ago to share with you different tools and our understanding of nature reality.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. I loved having you on mine. I'm glad to be
Oh,
here.
yeah, I can't wait for it to come out. So, Sarah, I know you've been on a journey for a while as well, and you interviewed so many people. What excites you today?
About life or about spirituality? I
Everything.
guess it's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
What excites me today? I will say that today was a good day. Like, specifically today that we're recording this was a good day because I basically just spent the whole day with my newborn baby and we just smiled at each other and laughed the whole day. So it was
Oh,
just really sweet. It was just, yeah, it was nice. Of course, I had the to-do list. I got some things done that needed to get done and did the dishes. I did a little bit of work and whatever else. But like basically the whole day was just focused on being in the moment with my newborn. So that's what's exciting me right now is
no.
seeing him develop and grow into his own little personality. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Those are such special moments. I'm
Yeah.
thinking back 11 years when I had my kid and like the amount of breastfeeding that we do. But what's beautiful about it is that ability to be in the present moment. I think
Mhm.
everything else falls away and you just are with the other being. And we don't
Yeah.
have a lot of those opportunities. We tend to just run around and do. And there's something about just being and observing.
Yeah, and it's fun to see it change too over time. It's only been a few months, but like he's already like behaving differently than he was like a month ago. So I feel like I really want to be present. But it was also interesting is that it tends to bring up a lot of guilt too. As soon as I was this way with my daughter too when she was a baby, but as soon as they go to sleep for the night, I'm like overwhelmed with, did I do enough today? Did I tell them I love them enough today? Was I present enough today? So it's really dynamic in that way, if that makes sense. Like maybe
Yeah.
other mothers listening can relate or other parents listening can relate, but I try really hard to be in those moments because I don't want to actually realize that I didn't do those things. I try to take advantage of it in the moment because eventually he will be 11 and he won't necessarily want to spend all day smiling and laughing with me. He'll be out
No,
doing his own thing.
the 11-year-old in middle school doesn't want to do homework. And so my presence is like sitting down with him and making
Yeah,
sure he gets it done,
I've
which
been
is,
there. I don't want to be doing homework either.
yeah, absolutely. And so that topic of enough is interesting one because we carry this guilt and shame sometimes that we didn't do what is necessary. But how do we categorize that? And why do you think we carry that?
I honestly think, at least for me, for my own self reflection, I think we carry that because it's like FOMO. It's fear of missing out. It's
Mm,
feeling like I missed my chance. And that ultimately comes from a scarcity mindset, which to a certain extent, yes, there is limited chances. Like my baby's only a baby once, right? So if I don't take advantage, like these days will pass and I won't get them back, right? So there's that aspect of there is scarcity at play here. And but there's also I'm afraid of missing out on those sorts of things. So when we feel like we're not taking advantage of those moments, we're not fully present, it can be like instant regret because you're thinking, what was I doing? What was more important than that? But we're only seeing it in hindsight, right? So this is why meditation is so important and mindfulness is so important because it teaches you to get out in front of yourself so you don't have to think back in hindsight and say, "Hey, I didn't do that and now I regret it." But now you're like, "Hey, I my ego might be still saying I didn't do enough," but you can counteract it by saying, "You know what? I was fully present. When I look back, I can see that I was fully present in the here and now, and now I'm just being overly critical." So it's almost like you give yourself ammo too when you're a little bit more mindful, if that makes sense.
I
Yeah.
think the ego is a part of that. And
Yeah.
how do we find that balance between the ego, the free will, versus the divine will? I feel like the divine will does not judge. There's no such thing as criticism. Everything is enough. Everything is in the moment. So there's no past, there's no present. Everything is just perfect as it is. And it's our human conditioning with our individuality that we have to learn how to befriend those two aspects of ourselves and find that balance so we don't judge ourselves so hardly. And I know a lot of people like sometimes hear those voices and create those doubts, but I don't think they're useful, especially when it comes to manifestation.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think your ego has a place and has a role to play, and it's part of us. Like a lot of the spiritual rhetoric out there is like, how do we get rid of the ego and how do we drop it? And it's such a bad, terrible thing. Stop listening to it. Well, that's not necessarily true. That doesn't help you. But at the same time, in the same breath, a lot of what the ego doesn't help you either. So, yeah, it is finding that balance between that free will and the divine connection, like you said. That's a lot of what we do in manifesting is being able to rein in. I should say mindful manifesting because you're always manifesting, right? A lot of the way I teach mindful manifesting is learning how to rein in that those ego thoughts that are just happening, like the ones where I didn't do enough, I'm regretting what I did or didn't do today, and actually being a little bit more aware and intentional about it so that you can change the energy of those words and those thoughts so you can change your energy and change what you're manifesting.
So, what do you typically teach people? What kind of usually maybe problems or requests people come to you for when it comes to being a manifesting coach?
I feel like a lot of people, they first come to me because there are huge changes that they want. They like want to uproot their entire lives and change every single aspect. They want to get married or they want to get divorced or they want a new career or a new business or they want to have a baby or they want like these huge massive changes. And it's pretty much like those big things. Like they want like family, career, and abundance essentially, like the financial stability and freedom. Like those are all the big main themes, and very rarely do people like come to me because they just want one little small thing changed. I think eventually it turns into that once you realize that you have to build up manifesting momentum. But initially, people are like, I want everything in my life to be different next year. Like, I want to not even recognize myself in 12 months, which is possible. And a lot of people are willing to do it and able to do it. But I think that a lot of what I teach is circles around building up that manifesting momentum and not having to do it all at once because it's about gradually changing your energy. Because as the and listeners, you might be familiar as well, the law of attraction responds to what your energy is, what you're putting out there. And I call that your energy blueprint. And your energy blueprint is made up of all kinds of things. You can start to, I'm sure you're already thinking about what it could be made up of. Like, think your chakras, your affirmations in your brain, like your core beliefs, your limiting beliefs, your values, your personality. All these things come together to create what I call your energy blueprint, what you radiate outwards, and everything that you are has created the life around you right now, or at least contributed to it, I should say. It's contributed to where you find yourself now. So if you want to change everything from the ground up, like you absolutely want to overhaul everything, you have to completely dismantle everything that you already are right now and change everything. And that's no easy task. Like, you don't do that overnight, right? Sometimes the universe might be like, "Oh, just kidding, this is happening overnight." Like they pull out the last little bottom block in the Jenga tower and it all falls down, right? That does happen for some people sometimes, but it's much more efficient and easier on your mind, body, and spirit to do it a little bit more gradually. So that's what I lean into, is moving through those different phases of manifesting where you're doing it gradually, you're doing it in a way that makes sense, that feels right, that's you're stepping outside your comfort zone, but not so much that you're like slipping and falling. Just doing
Yeah.
it a little by little, building up that manifesting momentum.
I like the idea of the manifesting momentum. I use the verbs quantum,
Yep.
field, and becoming a creator of our reality. In the field, everything is already available. So that full overhaul is possible too, but we have to
Yeah.
vibrationally match it. That takes a lot of change of consciousness and ability to navigate different states of emotions, of thought patterns, and all of that. So, curious, what are your thoughts about resistance and other possible blockages that don't allow people to manifest as they want?
What holds you back? That being stubborn does not really serve you, and that is not the way that the universe operates. But there is also a fine line of giving in and like settling versus being stubborn. Like we have to line somewhere in the middle. So if your boundaries are being pushed and they're being crossed, that's not the same as resistance, right? But if you're sitting still and you're going, hey, it's this way or the highway, and I'm not moving, then you can't really move forward either. Either way, you're not moving forward. So resistance doesn't serve you in any regard. I like to paint the analogy of meadow grasses. Some people use a tree. The system or the idea is the same, right? Where you have a strong stem and it's whipping around in the wind, right? But it's still in the ground. The roots are still strong. The wind is moving it all around. It's moving in the wind very violently sometimes, or maybe it's a gentle sway sometimes. But once the wind stops, it's still there and strong. The tree branches are moving around, the leaves are moving around, but the tree is still strong and rooted there. To me, that's what moving with the universe is like. But resistance is more like a immovable mountain, which isn't always necessarily a bad thing. We want to be strong like a mountain, but mountains don't move at all, and they just stay there forever, and everything is expected to move around it. When you want to be the tree in the breeze, you want to be the meadow grass in the breeze, because they still thrive, and there's still um, a lot to be learned in that sort of a scenario rather than just standing still all the time. I hope that makes sense. I like analogies, but sometimes they can get a little difficult. But resistance ultimately, it causes more problems than what it's worth. And if you're feeling like you are resistant to whatever is happening, that means there is something being challenged right now. I call this an expansion opportunity, where
Mm.
there is an opportunity for you to reflect, to review. It's how the universe's way of going, hey, this is something that is creating a block right now. So it's your chance to reflect. And you could say it's a healing opportunity, but it's not everything needs to be healed, in my opinion. Like it's just a chance to reflect and expand and grow that way. So if you are facing a lot of resistance, there's probably some sort of block that's being uncovered that the universe is pointing to directly, going, hey, this is causing problems right now. Like this is creating your manifesting ceiling. So instead of being super stubborn and ignoring it or just continuously butting up against it, learn to be that grass in the wind and just go with
And
the
then
flow. And it's very highly nuanced. Like I speak very generally because every single situation is different, right?
And I think the other aspect of it is like the allowance and surrender as well,
Mhm.
because I think everyone's trying to control how this particular manifestation is going to happen, how it's going to come back to you in the way that you want. But that also creates resistance.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the ways that I like to teach about manifesting as well, because when you are really dead set on one very specific outcome, it gives you tunnel vision. And you could very well miss out on things that are bigger and better because you can't dream big enough, right? Because you are human. And yes, you are spiritual. You're a spiritual being in a human body, but that human body is very heavy and it's very dense energetically. And you just simply cannot dream big enough. The universe has so much more in store for you. So if you decide that you want to manifest something specific, you have to be willing to say this or something bigger or this or something better. Because if you try to stick with just that one very specific thing, you try to surrender to it, but you're facing a lot of resistance, it's because there's more there. And you're not leaving enough wiggle room for the universe to do what it needs to do. So that's, in my opinion, that's the difference between goal setting and manifesting, where we use aspects of goal setting, like normal goal setting, what the muggles do, if you will, like just what we typically talk about when we are trying to achieve your dreams, right? So that is well and good, all very valid things, but goal setting is very pass or fail. You either make it to the goal or you don't. But manifesting is not that way. You have an idea in mind and that idea drives you forward, but you need to be open to other things. What you're really trying to manifest is the feeling, not necessarily the thing, right?
I like that. It's really about the journey, not the destination, which is
Yes.
ultimately the whole soul journey. So we're
Yes.
here to learn and experience and make the best of it. And whether we get to that specific final destination or not, that's not what really matters. Yeah, I that resonates a lot. So this is my formulation of manifestation. How I teach it is related to my name, Diana, which is the goddess of hunting. From a physical perspective, I tell them, so imagine holding a bow and arrow, and I put all my intentions in concentrated form, not too long of a paragraph, but like a couple of sentences right on the tip of that arrow. And then I shoot it out to the universe, and then I detach.
I have to. It's
Trust.
flying away.
And I trust that this arrow, I shot it in a way that is perfect. This arrow is going to come back to me in whatever time, the most appropriate time, place, and space, back to me, and will deliver fruits of my intentions.
I love
So,
that.
and so and it's just like resonates for me because I feel it's like hunting manifestation, but in a way that you detached from exactly what you caught. You can have a
Yes.
good intention though.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people get really worried about the detachment. So, what I conceptualize manifesting as is four phases: mindset shifting, intuitive planning, inspired action, letting go. And that letting go phase is the detachment that you're referencing here. And a lot of people, first off, don't even realize that's what they're missing. Like they just get so caught up in what's very specific thing they're trying to manifest. And it's either this or nothing. And that
Mm.
causes blocks unintentionally. But people get worried about that idea of detachment because they associate that with settling or with giving up. They're saying, like, oh, I'm detaching from it, which means I have no feeling. Like it means that I don't care if it comes, which is simply not true at all. What you're doing is just allowing the universe to do its job because it's co creation. Another word for manifesting is co creation. So you're doing your part. And when you let go and you allow a little bit of control to be surrendered over to the universe, it's doing its part. Right. You know how in school, when we all did group projects and there was one person that always tried to take over and it never worked. But all the group projects that actually did was when everyone worked together to
Mhm.
come up with something and it always turned out better than what you thought you would have been. Maybe you've never worked in a group like that. I don't know. If people are really like, I don't know, group projects, whatever. Another analogy here, but that's it's very similar to what happens when you manifest mindfully with the universe. When you leave enough wiggle room for the universe to bring you something better that you didn't even know you wanted, because there is more than just you here. You're in the driver's seat and you're the one that can accept it or deny it and be in as much control as you want or need. But at the end of the day, it's also about the universe sending you what you're here to receive, right? That's
Mm.
part of the soul journey, as you mentioned. So
Yeah.
being willing to co-create, I think, is really important. And it really is the missing key. That detachment and that surrender is what a lot of people are missing when it comes to manifesting.
The phrase that's coming to me is it's not necessarily always what you want, but what you need.
Yes, that is exactly correct. So think about the best novel you've ever read or like the best movie you've ever watched or whatever. The main character always starts with something that they want. But by the end of the story, it's almost never what they wanted that they get. It's what they needed that they got. Shrek is a really good example of this. I know we all know Shrek. It's like 25 years old. I know you've seen it. So he starts off the movie wanting to be alone in the swamp, right? That's what he wants. But what he needs actually is a loving, accepting family. And that's what he gets by the end of it. So that's how he goes through that character growth journey. He ultimately ends up manifesting what he wanted or what he needed, not necessarily what he wanted.
Yeah.
And then he realized that's what actually what he wanted all along. So I'm glad you brought that up because that's so true. It's true in fiction and it's also true in real life.
Absolutely. And I think we need to learn how to dance with that idea that
Yeah.
we might, like you said, tunnel vision or blind spots are all around
Mhm.
us. We don't always see it all. And just because we don't see it, we might not be aware that there is a great opportunity for us, a better partnership or whatever better project that is in better vibrational alignment to where we are. So maybe we can talk about that a little more. How important is your alignment and the vibrational state you're in.
I would argue that's probably one of the most important things. You always want to make sure that you're cultivating energy that matches what you want to manifest. And of course, we just talked about what you want versus what you need, whatever. But you got to get that manifesting ball rolling. So you have to have your eyes on the prize. You have to go, okay, this is a certain frequency, this is a certain energy or a certain vibe. How am I going to align with that vibe, that energy, whatever word you want to use? This is really vital because the universe is always going to respond to your energy with like energy. That's just how it works. You're always manifesting. So, in order to do it mindfully, you have to consciously sit back, take a look at your energy blueprint, feel it out if you're able to do that. Maybe have somebody else help you with that if you need, but just really self reflect. Say, what is it that I'm putting out there? And how is it coming back to me? So that self-reflection is really important because that is ultimately how the law of attraction works. So in order to be in alignment with what it is that you want to manifest, you have to decide, what does future me have? What is their energy? What is future me's energy? And how do I adjust myself to do that? So maybe there's certain habits you need to either start doing or stop doing. Maybe more than likely there's more habits and mindsets, like certain affirmations that you're saying, whether they're positive or negative, certain beliefs that you always fall back on that can be adjusted, like physically in your brain. They're creating a very specific energy in your mind. So what is your future self thinking? What is your future self doing? How are they feeling? And you're doing your best to feel that way, think that way, do those things now. That's how you get into alignment with that energy. And this kind of relates back to what you normally talk about, which is like quantum jumping, quantum
Mm-hmm.
changing, whatever phrase
Right.
you want to use.
Yeah.
You're essentially jumping that timeline. That's how you get into alignment, because you have to be like, what is that energy that I want? What is my energy now? How do I change it? And you're bridging that gap there. That takes a lot of courage and a lot of really intentional action. So if you're at the point in your journey where you're doing that, like, bravo to you. Most people don't get there because that's hard work. And it also requires setting aside a lot of self-judgment, self-criticism, because people go, I people objectively understand that a lot of what they're doing isn't going to get them where they want to be, and yet they keep doing those things just because there's a lot of habits, a lot of subconscious patterns that are difficult to change. So there's a lot of shame in realizing that I could have done this or I could be this and I'm not right now. So you have to get over that hump a little bit in order to do like this quantum changing, right? I'm sure you've experienced that a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like quantum jumping, and at the same time, time is not linear, it's multidimensional, and
Right.
time is alive and malleable. So the movie has been already done, right? So it's like we pull in the end of the story sort of towards ourselves. That's the law of attraction aspect of it. And because there's different subplots and many possible endings, picking that specific one that we like. So there is, I think, that sovereignty and conscious choices that we can make. We can choose different timelines as we align ourselves to our preferences.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's never too late to do that. You're never too old. The circumstances are always good. Doesn't matter what you've done in the past or where you are right now, it's never too late to do this work, right? So you have to ask yourself, like, what is stopping me from doing it, right? So I understand consciously understand the possibilities are there. So why aren't I doing it? And what do I have to do to get there? So that's where I come in as the manifesting coach. That's my goal, to help
Mhm.
people, is to bridge that gap and to figure out that next step to actually align your energy. So I appreciate you asking how we do that, because that's everything that I do with my clients, that I do on my podcast, is to answer that question. How do you align your energy with what it is that you want to manifest?
I think it's the most important thing. I don't call it manifestation, but it's the same thing. It's like quantum creation.
Yeah.
And it's all about alignment, because if there's no alignment, it's not going to happen.
Yep.
Because the field only understands what you already put it out there. And so I like the idea that you were mentioning. It's about feeling it, right? So we have to visualize it. We have to experience it as though it's already been created, because it has been, right? The movie has been already shot, and now it's already existing in the field. Because if I say I want, it's assuming it's not there altogether, versus I feel as though it's already there. All I need is just to align myself and tune my radio station a little bit to that channel better so then it actually happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And a big epiphanies happen with just that, Like you don't really, what you just described is the mindset shifting phase. That's what I
Really?
call it anyway. It's hard to conceptualize these things sometimes. So that's why I have a lot of phrases and analogies that hopefully make it a little easier to understand. But yeah, what you just described is mindset shifting mostly, because so much of your energy is determined by your literal brain inside your head. The way it looks, the way it operates, so much of your energy is created there. So if you're able to focus on those feelings and use that visualization, your subconscious mind can't tell the difference between what is real, quotes, what is real and what's just visualization. So being able to dig into that work is so powerful and life changing for so many people. And that's just like the start of it. That's like just the tip of the iceberg. And you can just keep going deeper and deeper and just change everything slowly over time, of course, to our first point. But that's a lot where a lot of people start is in the mind and
Yeah.
realizing that it's the feeling that they want, not necessarily the thing that they want.
Yeah. The feeling matters because the feeling is what holds the geometry of the creation itself.
Yeah.
From metaphysics perspective, the thoughts are just like ideation, right? The world was created by God uttering a word. So we just first thinking about it, but then we saying it out loud. Then it creates a geometry. So I think there is like more metaphysics around how this creation process happens. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts about that. Do affirmations actually work? And saying them out loud, does that matter or not?
This is great because it does have a lot of to do with metaphysics, but when it comes specifically to things like affirmations, that is neuroscience. And in my opinion, they coexist. Science and spirituality are
Yeah,
meant to coexist.
exactly.
But sometimes people get a little, they have walls that come up when they hear, maybe probably nobody listening to this podcast, let's be real. But a lot of people, when they hear metaphysics, they go, nope, that's not it. But this is neuroscience. Affirmations absolutely do work. And I will tell you why, because you already have affirmations, right? No matter if this is your first time listening to anything spiritual related, or if you're a veteran like us, there are things in your brain that are repeated over and over again. Okay. This is just the natural way of things. You don't even need to hear the word affirmation for this to be true. This is true of all humans. There's always ruminating, there's always specific phrases that are being fired. And when that happens, when you think that thought or say that thing, you can do it aloud or in your brain, to answer your question. Like it can be in your mind or aloud. I think aloud is a little bit easier because it's easier to focus your thoughts on it. But either way, it's the same thing. You have the same effect. So every single time you think that's very specific thought or affirmation, a neuron is shot through your brain, right? So that's like a little bit of electricity that's going a very specific path that's thinking that thought. And the more you think that thought, the deeper that line in your physically, that deeper that line in your brain gets. So if you can picture a brain, kind of gruesome, but if you can picture it, it's got a bunch of lines and crevices, and it looks like rolled up Play-Doh, like you took a snake of Play-Doh and kind of squirreled it up. That's what it looks like. And your brain is malleable, like physically, literally malleable. And this is called neuroplasticity. So when you think your thoughts, you're engaging in molding your brain on a very physical, literal level. So when you go to change your thoughts, you think a new neuron fires, right? A thought you never thought before is a brand new neuron. And it's going to be a little bit more challenging to hang on to that thought or to see it as true because it's basically skidding across a flat plane rather than like in a canyon, if that makes sense. So the more you think that thought, the deeper that canyon goes. And the less you think a thought, like if you stop thinking I'm poor and instead start thinking I'm rich, your brain is going to physically change to reflect that. And the beautiful thing is that the more you create those crevices, those canyons in your brain, the more subconscious bias turns on in that direction. So every single time you look out into the world, your subconscious mind is looking to reinforce what it already believes to be true. So this is why affirmations work. So when you're constantly telling yourself I'm rich, you are physically looking around and going, "Oh, there's an example of why I'm rich. There's more reasons to be rich. Here's why I'm rich right here. It's happening." And whatever your affirmation is, it's true for that. Because your subconscious mind is going to reinforce what it already believes to be true because that physically takes less energy and our physical body runs on fight or flight. It runs on what is easiest for literal survival because it's very primal of us. That's where like physical evolution comes in, biological evolution comes in, where we are hardwired to use as little energy as possible, which is why if you don't ever check your mindset, if you don't ever consciously choose your intentions and be very aware of the mind movies that you're playing. Essentially, if you don't practice mindfulness, it's just going to be on default and it's never going to change because that's already what's easy for you. I hope all that is making sense, but that is essentially why mindset shifting is so important, why affirmations are important, why visualization is important, because your brain is physically creating these thoughts and it's physically creating like an imprint in your energy, in your body, and it's going to radiate outwards and your mind is going to reinforce it and then your energy is going to reflect that, and it's like a domino effect. So I hope that answers that question. I could talk about that for an hour every single week for the last 4 years, like on my podcast.
It makes sense to me. So the brain is also relearning this
Yeah.
new reality pattern. The metaphor is really easy to understand. It's like the computer. So we have a certain hardware, and the hardware sometimes needs an upgrade because the new software can't run on it.
Oh
So we
yeah.
have to align that, and then the hardware starts working differently as we upgrade in the software. So all of that just started to elevate itself to a new version 2.0 of
Yeah, I love
ourselves.
that.
And then everything starts matching that reality, and the speed you come at, and the awareness factor too, like the awareness of the awareness, right? Because if
Mm,
you put it into the field that I'm rich, I'm abundant, I like the word abundant better than rich,
yeah.
more encompassing
Yes.
than then abundance can mean many things. Of course, it's energy exchange. It's not always about having extra dollar bills in your wallet. And that energy exchange can mean so many things. I love that in the old times, people bartered their products, their harvests. There was this exchange of energy, and it wasn't, the commodities was seen in a different way. And I think we lost touch with that.
Yeah, because our modern society, here in the United States at least, is very capitalist, right? I don't like to speak about other countries because I don't live there. But yeah, our country, everything is sellable, everything is profitable. And I don't think it's necessarily inherently a bad thing, but it does lose that innate connection to the spiritual side of things when everything has to do with money. Just to your point, there's so many forms of abundance. And again, that's one of the reasons why we focus on the feeling in manifesting rather than the thing. Because this is a great example. So many people want to manifest riches. They want to be rich, right? They say abundance and they immediately think money when they don't quite realize yet that abundance is everything. They go, I want to manifest abundance. And they visualize actual like stacks of money. And that's great. You can bet that you're going to manifest some cash. If you're working to manifest abundance, it's going to happen. But if you keep that tunnel vision, you're going to miss out on all the gifts and the donations and the other ways that abundance can come to you, which is just nearly endless. So that's a good example of
Yeah.
why tunnel vision is bad.
Don't be too narrow and dream big. When it comes to relationships, I would say I manifested my twin flame, my husband, now 8 years, by doing the work. I followed the manifestation book, so to speak, in setting the intention, open the container. It was like a ceremonial setting. I was ready for it. I trusted, I had faith, and it manifested in about a month and a half, which is very quick.
Wow.
And but also noticed the universe threw some curveball tests right before to ensure that I knew when it's it and it's not it. I'm curious to hear your experience when it comes to your guidance on relationship and
Yeah.
manifesting your soul partner.
Yeah. So my husband and I have been married for 8 years as well. So right around the same time, it sounds
Right.
like. So that's
We
awesome.
did well.
Yes. I won't bore you all with the details of my entire life story, but I feel as though he came into my life right when I stopped looking for him. And that was that surrender aspect a little
Mm,
bit where I very well in my heart knew that I was like, I know he's out there. He's gonna find me. I'm gonna find him. It's gonna happen. I just knew I knew everything. I knew 2 + 2 = 4. Like it was just a fact in my life. It felt really inevitable. And that's the key word with it, the inevitability factor, I think. I just knew that it was gonna happen. And I didn't know exactly how it was gonna happen. And I just let it go into the ether. And it turned out I already knew who he was. We had a couple of college classes together, and then we just ran into each other outside of class, and it just snowballed from there. So I already knew him. He was already in my circle, but I just didn't realize it yet. So maybe that was why it felt so like on a soul level. Maybe I just knew that he was there. But I also, speaking of, I don't know if you can really count this as a relationship, but it's another human being in my life where I manifested my perfect birthing experience twice. So I guess it's a relationship, right, with my little ones. But it just had that same factor of inevitability. Like in one way or another, these babies are coming out of my body. Like they are exiting in some way. So I had to let it go. I had to trust that it was going to happen in the perfect way, and knowing that they chose a very specific way to come into the earth and to come into this world, and just knowing that it wasn't just about me, it was also about this other person, and it worked out perfectly each time. Like I couldn't have asked for a better situation. I'm very blessed, very grateful for that sort of thing. So I think there's an element of just trusting. That's the most important thing, I think, is trusting that they're out there and trusting that they're looking for you too, but you don't necessarily need to look high and low for it, and just know that it's going to happen when it's meant to happen, because you also have to work through your own crap too, like how you mentioned you had some obstacles that you have to go through in order to match each other's energy. Because if you do that, if you try to find each other before you're ready, like that wouldn't even work, because your energy wouldn't even be there. If you think about all those past relationships, like all your exes, however many you have, they didn't work out for a reason, right? Because they ultimately didn't align with some aspect. They were here to teach you something, and then that was it. So I think just trusting that it's meant to be in a way that you can't necessarily pinpoint, because it's also divinely timed.
Definitely. For me, it was also recognition of the pattern that these exes, they were karmic relationships and they were very heavy and dense. And that I was actually choosing, this is what the quantum jump aspect of it, I was choosing a different timeline. And in that timeline, I was in a relationship that did not have any of that baggage. The other person was ready as I was, and was ready to do the work and being in this divine union and co-creation together. So I didn't know what it was called. Later, I learned the twin flame terminology or label that's used in the community, but it was just more around, like you said, the feeling. The other thing that I remember that I did, my sister recommended, is to write down the qualities of
Mm.
the person. So again, it wasn't about exactly, but more like back to the feeling, like how you're going to feel with that person being in your space and what kind of qualities they have. But again, the list not too long, very intentional, just 5 to 7 qualities that you want in that person that really matter for you.
I love that you brought up breaking the pattern, because that's so important. That kind of goes back to the chemistry of your brain, that you have to physically break those thought patterns in order for things to change. You have to break your habits to make new ones. And that exercise that you just mentioned, listing like 5 to 7 qualities, is so powerful, right? Because you can do that with anything. You can do that with a job, you can do that with a house, you can do that with a car. If you're trying to manifest a car or whatever it is that you need in your space, 5 to 7 qualities is perfect. I also did that with pretty much any experience that I know I want to have. Like birthing was a good example, or travel, or finding a dream job, or building a business, whatever it is. You focus on those qualities rather than the very specific ultimately limiting belief of what you think you want. And that gives the universe plenty of room to add more and send you something even better. You jump the timeline. I love it.
Yeah, I haven't even thought about how you can apply the qualities to all those other things you can manifest, but it worked. And I think the piece that really, and in your case too, it worked. I think it works because you're really allowing that other thing to unfold, because the allowance piece is important, like the surrender and the allowance, because you're ready for the change, allowing the resistance to step aside, and you're like, yeah, I'm ready for the next chapter whenever that comes. I wasn't attached. I'm just having an awesome journey. I went to Burning Man. I was having an awesome
Oh,
journey.
fun.
It was the best burn ever. I was flying high, literally. And I was in the happiest place ever coming out of that burn. I was in Reno, Nevada when we met. And it was like that instant also knowing in that moment that I had as well. It was like, oh, wow. Yeah, I think this is it right here. It was just like the knowingness was immediate.
I can definitely relate to that, where one of the reasons that I knew like things were different instantly is that the way my animals reacted to him was really important. And it was important to me that they got along, but it was also like really strange, like totally out of character. And I was like, pretty sure my orange cat has never done that with someone before. And then 8 years later, they still love each other. So I think there's always like little clues too. And when you practice that awareness and that surrender, you start to realize that, hey, this is different. I'm not falling into the same old patterns anymore. The more you self-reflect and the more you become aware, it becomes impossible to fall into those old patterns because you're too aware. Once you wake up, you can't fall back asleep. And it's also taking accountability as well for those patterns and the role that you play in them.
I think relationships meant to be that mirror for you.
Yeah.
They are there to also heal you in some ways or trigger you. So if you haven't shifted and you're still operating from that pattern, it will continue perpetually roll ball one after another. They will be replaying until you decide, okay, I don't want this anymore. So
Absolutely. That's like such a universal experience. Nearly
Mhm.
everyone has gone through that, no matter how old you are, how many exes you ever had. I only have a couple of exes and they basically were all the same person. And I realized it pretty quickly, thankfully, but I've have clients come to me that are midlife and they go, all my ex-boyfriends have always been this way. I've never been with there are no good men out there. I've never been with a decent man, anything like that. Because there's that pattern is there. And until you become aware of the pattern and you realize what it is that you're meant to learn with that specific pattern, or what is it about, like what quality is being shown to you that you're meant to reflect on, until you learn that lesson, you can't break through that manifesting ceiling and change it. That
Oh,
applies to anything.
absolutely. This is a podcast where I do talk about past lives and things like that. I do see the pattern. It often goes beyond this lifetime. It's like we keep on coming into each lifetime until we finally have that aha moment. Is okay, I had enough of this.
Yeah.
It's time to weave in a new story, a new tapestry, and that's yeah, this last few episodes before you, we were talking about literally weaving, like tapestries, and then the weaving is that matrix reality where we have certain graphs and we create a certain pattern, but it's within constraints of reality, right? And we choose to do something else. It's still within the constraints, but the choice of what type of drawing you want to do is weaving. So
Interesting.
yeah. So I feel manifesting is very much weaving.
Yeah. They're all the same thing, just different words and techniques, right?
It applies to how we see reality too,
Absolutely.
and the co-creation aspect of it. So the
Hmm.
divine will, the spirit is here to be with us. We're not separate from it. What do you want to do now? How are we going to dance this dance now? What kind of pattern
Right.
you want?
And they're just like, I'm here. Just let me know when you're ready. Just tap me in whenever.
And that partner, he's waiting too.
Oh,
But
yeah.
you gotta initiate, girl. I feel it's through the female. The female is the magneticism. So she magnetizes to
Mm,
herself the electromagnetic, the
yeah.
man. Mhm.
Interesting. I love that. Seems to fit based on what I've observed. Makes total sense. And
It's
also, like, what society expects too is that the man is meant to, in heterosexual relationships, the man is expected to make the first move, right? Like, you come to me. That's supposed to be seen as like very romantic. So I totally understand that.
yeah. But actually, it's all her.
Absolutely. Girl power.
Girl power. You were talking about birthing, right? It's the
Mhm.
womb of creation. So we're going back to rudimentary of how we birth in and creating something new. It's very much a female energy.
Yeah. I do think women naturally, I don't want to say understand, but like they're naturally inclined to perfect the skill of manifesting a little bit better. There's plenty of men that do it and they do it successfully. I have plenty of men clients that do it, but women just it seems to click easier because I think they just have that innate ability to create and they tend to be a little bit closer to spirit just because they have the ability to make most, whether or not you actually do or have all the plumbing or whatever it is that you need to actually make it happen, they just have all of the DNA that is a little bit closer to spirit because they do make life and bring it into the world. So I think it does click for women, I think, a little bit easier and differently for the most part.
Hmm.
So men have an added challenge of having to overcome that little bit of a different type of energy that's in them. Not that it's not impossible, of course. They can do it. It looks different.
Do you think it has to do maybe also with IQ versus EQ, where
Oh,
women
perhaps.
tend to have high EQ, so they
Mhm.
have a better mastery of like emotional states, versus men tend to be more disconnected? I'm generalizing.
Yeah, of course it's a generalization. That's everything I do is generalized. Unless you're a client sitting right in front of me, I can't speak to your specific situation. I think that makes total sense because manifesting does inherently rely on the emotions and the feelings, as we've already discussed. And masculine energy tends to lean more into the doing and the taking action. And we all have these energies within us, whether you're a man or a woman, they exist within you, as I'm sure your audience is well aware. But yeah, the masculine energy definitely leans more into that logical side of things. And that plays an important role in manifesting, but the emotions are more important. So I definitely think it makes a lot of sense to think that because women tend to have more emotional intelligence, be more emotionally aware, it comes a little bit faster for them. But then, of
Yeah.
course, sometimes they get hung up on the actual doing of things. A lot of women that I see, they come to me and they go, I've been thinking my affirmations, I've been reciting them, I've been visualizing, I've been doing all of like the head and the heart stuff. But then where they're lacking is like the taking action side. But then the
Mm.
men will come and see me and they'll have the opposite problem. They're like, I'm doing all the things. I plan and I'm doing whatever. I'm waking up at 5 a.m. and I'm reading and I'm working out. And I'm doing all of those whatever the stuff. But then they're missing the head and the heart part. So it's all about just bringing it all together, full circle. Can't
So,
do one without the other. The yin
right,
yang, right?
right, the yin yang. So you got to take action. You got to feel into it. You got to say your affirmations. You got to visualize. You got to do the whole formula.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the formula doesn't work.
Yeah. All four of the phases, you might say.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Sarah. This is so enlightening.
Yeah.
What's the best way to get in touch with you if someone is interested to work with you?
Thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to share. So, my podcast is the Spiritually Inspired Podcast. You can find it wherever you get your pods. If you're watching this on YouTube, I am also on YouTube. I have some guided Reiki meditations there if you want to pop over there. But mainly, if you go to spirituallyinspired.co, that's where you'll be able to find everything. If you want to book a session, if you want to join our Facebook group, if you're just want to read some blog posts or listen to some podcast episodes, that's where I'm at, spirituallyinspired.co.
Beautiful. And I'm going to be on spiritualinspired.co at some
Yes,
point too. I don't know.
absolutely. Very
Maybe in a
soon.
month or so.
Yes.
We had fun also talking about quantum, but I like this conversation we had more kind of dissecting the manifestation aspect of it because I think everyone who's listening probably been trying and wanting to manifest. And so it's more involved, but it's totally possible.
Yeah.
So yeah,
It's a skill that you can develop, like
totally.
anything.
It's a skill and an art. I think it's a combination.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
It's
Absolutely. Just
art.
to our last point, you got to have the emotional side of it and you have to be able to do the things and they have to be able to interchange. So yeah, it's definitely something that we can all do. It's a skill the same way that painting is. Like you have to have that eye for it, but at the
Mm,
same time you can learn and develop it at any point in time. So,
yeah.
yes, I definitely agree with you.
Beautiful. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in and go manifest. Many blessings.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode. For more information, please visit the website tianadivine.com. We are offering different programs, workshops, retreats, as well as one-on-one work such as quantum healing hypnosis, crystalline cell healing, and more on sourcelanguage.org, offering a digitized course. It's self-paced where you can open up to your divine gift of light language. I'm Diana Mara Divine, and keep connecting with your higher self